8-year-old that taught a child predator how to love. This serial killer was taught how to love by an 8-year-old child. In 2005, a tragedy made highlights where an entire Idaho family was slain with their 2 younger children missing. Kidnapped, the smaller children would go on to survive in the woods, enduring the most brutal torture and sexual abuse. How did an 8-year-old outsmart her monstrous kidnapper? Welcome to the Mystique Quest channel, where we will talk about the ordeal of Shasta Groene, who managed to escape, taming the horrific predator who annihilated her family. If you are a true crime buff who enjoys unique cases, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Shasta Groene had an all-American family. She had 2 elder brothers, 9-year-old Dylan and 13-year-old Slade. Her mother, Brenda Groene, and stepfather Mark Mackenzie were the best parents a child could ask for. Close-knit, the family of 5 lived in rural Wolf Lodge, Idaho. Money was tight, but they were happy together. Her mother, Brenda, had long divorced Shasta's father, Steve Groene, but they were on civil terms. Shasta's life would change forever on May 16, 2005. Unknown to the family, they were being watched. A man had rented a red 2005 Jeep Grand Cherokee on April 15. He stole another set of license plates from a car in Missouri's Newton County. By 4th of May, that Jeep was reported stolen. On 1 June, the man did not show up at his trial, warranting arrest, but by then he was headed to Idaho. For no reason, he stopped in an area called Wolf Lodge 8 miles west of Coeur d'Alene. He eyed the family he saw there, the Groenes. It was completely random, but he had his new prey. He stalked them for days before making his first move. He even got treats for their pit bull every night, so the dog would recognize him. On May 15, the family had a neighborhood barbecue. Slade had mowed the lawn for his neighbor, who didn't have cash, so he told Slade he would pay him the next day. Things were normal. It was 6 a.m., and in the early morning hours of spring, little Shasta was awakened by her mother with a terrified whisper. "There's a man here. That doesn't want us to be here."
She had actually come into the room and said that there's a man here that doesn't want us to be.
Groggy, not fully awake, she was brought to the living room where a masked man was holding up her entire family with a shotgun. The little girl thought he was a police officer until he made them all lie face down on the ground, binding their hands with zip ties and duct tape.
My stepdad Mark had said, "We don't have money." We were hearing bangs, and then he was screaming, and
He carried Dylan and Shasta to the backyard, laying them under a tree. The terrified children could hear large blows, grunts of pain, and finally a bloodied Slade staggered to the entrance of the house, followed by the crazed man who rained blows on him with a Fat Max claw hammer. Slade slumped over the family's picnic table, barely alive. He roughly shoved the 2 children into the Jeep and drove off. Later that day, the neighbor who owed Slade money came by and immediately called 911. The family lay dead in the living room. Slade had managed to crawl back to his mother, dying beside her. An Amber Alert was issued for the 2 young children.
The fact that the bodies were so beaten up so badly, it made the crime appear to be a crime of passion.
You begin to think about who could have been so angry at this family to want to inflict such injury.
They first suspected Robert Roy, a man who owed Brenda and Mark $2,000 as he had visited them on the 15th. But he had an alibi and he turned himself in, even passed the polygraph test. But then something odd happened. Steve Groene had had a fight with Brenda just 2 days earlier, and he made some very strange statements on camera.
I'd like to address my children's abductors or abductor. Please release my children safely. They had nothing to do with any of this.
Almost as if he knew what this was about. You might think he had something to do with the kidnapping. The FBI set up a $100,000 reward for any information on Dylan and Shasta. 100 miles away at a remote campground outside St. Regis, Montana in the Lolo National Forest, the killer turned to the 2 frightened children with a claw hammer, informing them he killed their whole family with that hammer.
he grabbed the hammer. He said, "See this hammer? This is the hammer that I murdered your mom and your stepdad and your brother with." And he was like, "They're not alive and you're never gonna see them again." He just went ballistic pretty much. He put us into the red Jeep, and he proceeded to do nasty, horrible things to us.
The stunned children had no time to mourn. The man was angry, throwing things everywhere. He shut them up in a cabin. Their terrifying ordeal began. He abused them, not just physically or sexually, but also psychologically. He enjoyed playing with the children's emotions. He would force alcohol and marijuana on them. He would even make little Shasta watch as he abused her brother and do worse things if she protested or cried.
If me and Dylan ever seemed more interested in each other and what each other was doing, and we weren't showing interest in him.
Their kidnapper gave them false hope, saying he would set them free if they did as they were told. And it was not Stephen Groene. In fact, Steve Groene's name was cleared, despite a polygraph test that said he wasn't telling the truth. Police figured out that he was home at the time of the kidnapping. Their kidnapper was Joseph Duncan, a fugitive sex offender. A rapist since the age of 15, the now 42-year-old had served 14 years in prison. He was arrested in March 2005 for molesting a little boy, but managed to borrow bail money and ran away. He confessed with dark details, things he had done to two sisters from Seattle, Samuel White and Carmen. Little Shasta pretended to befriend him and made him like her.
He very vividly and in detail described murders of two sisters from Seattle, Samuel White and Carmen. He would tell us the way that he had done it, where he had placed their bodies. When he had started telling us about the murders, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pretend like I'm...
He asked them to write letters to their family about seeing them soon. For 9-year-old Dylan, that remained a dream. But Duncan kept playing mind games. He told the siblings if they caught a squirrel, they would go home. When they did, Shasta hugged her brother. As the two were holding hands, she heard a loud bang and her brother's hand slipped from her.
I was holding his hand and I heard a loud bang, and then I felt my brother's hand slip from mine. I couldn't even say anything, like I couldn't scream, I just didn't even know what.
Duncan shot the boy, telling Shasta it was an accident. He got rid of the body by making Shasta roll it into a tarp where he set it on fire. Frozen for a week, the girl was all alone now. Shasta knew if she was to live, she had to charm this monster.
Questions about his life, ask him about his family, and could I meet them one day?
It was a conscious thing, like I need to make him think that I love him or that I want to be.
6 weeks into the kidnapping, Duncan brought her down lower on the mountainside where she could see people passing by. The 8-year-old was smart enough to realize that she would be killed if she yelled for help. Shasta began to befriend him, talking to him as if she truly liked him. If he pretended he wanted to take her home, she went on with the pretense and said, "No, I want to stay here with you." But despite following orders, the cold monster gave her a hair-raising choice.
He was just like, you have the choice to be strangled or you have the choice to be shot like your brother, and that one's gonna be quicker. I felt like if I had chose the strangulation, that I might have a chance to talk him out of.
The brave little girl had her wits about, even in the face of death. She chose strangulation to have some time to stall her own murder to talk him out of it. As the man put a rope around her neck and pulled. But she mustered enough breath to use his nickname and say,
I had worked up enough breath to say, please don't.
That just got to him. He stopped. He was so confused as to why the little girl liked him and was so nice to him. But he told her she taught him how to love. Duncan asked her if she would live with him as his daughter. After weeks of torture and sexual abuse, little Shasta responded yes. The two decided to go see Duncan's mother. It was 2 in July 2005. So close to freedom, the little girl casually asked him to go see her neighborhood so she could show him her school. They went back to Coeur d'Alene, made a stop at a convenience store.
To bystanders, it looks like a loving father buying a soda for his child in a convenience store. But in reality, it's a key piece of evidence in a chilling kidnapping and...
Police received their first tip about the girl being spotted. They went to a Denny's, which had her missing persons poster. A man standing outside smoking nodded in her direction, and she discreetly nodded back. He went to the counter and spoke to the waitress, who sprang into action, seeing Shasta's dirty clothes and the fact that she wouldn't speak without Duncan's permission.
I'd spoken to my manager, said, I think we should probably call Coeur d'Alene PD. I'm pretty positive that's Shasta Groene over there. I'll pay for their meal if I'm wrong. We need to get somebody up here.
I've got a little girl here with a tall gentleman, and she looks so much like this Shasta. Okay, are they still in the building? And we're not sure. You know, she looks so much like her, and
Everyone was ready to stop Duncan if he ran, standing close to the door while the waitress pretends to have trouble printing a receipt to stall them. Everybody at that Denny's recognized the little girl from the posters. When the police arrive, the entire diner broke into applause, and Shasta immediately told the police he killed her entire family. Police recovered a shotgun and video recordings of the children. The footage was exceedingly disturbing.
Steve Groene stormed out of the courtroom this morning as Judge Edward Lodge warned everyone that federal prosecutors were about to play a very graphic video. During the recess, Groene aggressively asked a number of people to not go in the courtroom if they weren't essential to the court hearing. He then gave a graphic gesture almost as a warning. More than 10 people left the courtroom right before federal prosecutors played 3 graphic videos. Outside the court door, Steve Groene demanded the windows to the court be covered, and they were. Steve was overheard saying he wanted to know the name of every person in the court, adding he wanted everyone who watched the video who was not essential to the court hearing arrested for viewing child pornography. Steve also talked about wanting to make a citizen's...
Duncan had a disturbing online blog called The Fifth Nail, where he detailed all his past crimes. This was ample evidence to convict him. Duncan confessed to marking houses with children on his GPS. On 16 October 2006, while representing himself, he pled guilty to his crimes. As a result, he received 3 life sentences and then a death sentence. He spent his last years on death row in Terre Haute, Indiana, where he died from brain cancer in March 2021. Shasta went live with her father. She struggled with PTSD and later substance abuse, but finally built a life with her husband and 5 children. Shasta's story is one of incredible, unexpected bravery from an 8-year-old who not only outwits her monstrous kidnapper, but also manages to instill a transformative lesson in him: the capacity to love. As the sole survivor of her family, Shasta Groene is an example of how far willpower can go.